this looks wild. I'm pretty well experienced in golf and I know what I'm looking at almost all the time. I had no bloody clue what was going on there. I went up to have a look at the fairway before playing the hole. Okay, so you aim at a tree.
Common land, deer park golf, really high-end modern private golf, raw rudimentary golf over some really stunning land. None of it better or worse than any of it, just different. In this little island we call home, it's like all of that in abundance right here. It's almost like you're leaving the world behind. A lot of the big clubs, whether you're driving or walking, it's almost like there's this transition period that allows you to forget about what you've left and embrace what you're coming to.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top 100 Clubhouse Podcast. I'm your host, James Henderson. I'm with Jasper Miners. He's back again, the editor of the website and also our kind of guru in golf course architecture. We are going to be discussing this week we've been to a lot of cool places, haven't we, Jasper?
Yeah, we've done well the last few months, especially you. But I've not done too bad myself. But yeah, we'll cover some of the new courses, some of the replays we've had. I've been to Scandinavia, been to Spain, first attempt out there. So, and then obviously a bit of play here in UK and Ireland. So yeah, lots to discuss.
Let's start off with Scandinavia, because this is the one that I've been most looking forward to seeing and hearing about. Annoyingly, I won't have played it by the time I've not played it yet. I'm playing it in July or something. I've forgotten which date. But there's a golf course created by a young up and coming architect in Christian Lundin, who's done Trump New, which I played 4 days ago. And he has a slightly different style in his architecture to the rest of the gang on the block. So people are quite excited to see what he's up to. And I know that you've just come back from Crownwood. So tell us a bit about the experience, the golf course, everything.
Yeah, so Crownwood is north of, well, it's actually easier to get to, I think, if you go to Copenhagen. So we flew into Copenhagen, played Royal Copenhagen, then the next day drove north to Crownwood, which is just over the border from Denmark. So short ferry. Once you get to the other side, you're pretty much there. Quite easy to get to. I think it was a couple hour and a half or so, plus the ferry ride. And once you get there, you feel like you are at some sort of Scandinavian mixture of Tara Iti and South Carolina. So the property itself it's right on the coast. It's only a couple hundred meters from the coast. You can't see the sea, but you can hear it. And similar to Tara Iti or Tierrai, it was a Christmas tree farm, some sort of pine tree softwood farm. And they were able to get the land. And I think they were the second ones that went in to try and build a golf course. But it's been a long-term project, almost 15 years. Henrik Stenson is involved there. There's another individual as an investor, and then Christian Lundin with the architectural lead. So when you come in, the first thing that's very obvious is the open sand scrapes. And we're not talking sand scrapes as in, a couple of, oddly placed sand scrapes on a links golf course that don't seem to fit, like we oftentimes see here in the UK. This is expansive sand that plays a critical role in the golf course, especially strategically. And then just a lot of short grass and expansive fairways. So it's similar, I think, to some of the Pinehurst, South Carolina aesthetics that you might see. It's a beautiful golf course, and it's something you don't see very often, and especially something that you don't see in this part of the world. So I think the biggest thing about it is that it's very much a welcoming, open, private club. So they've got an 11-hole short course, great practice facilities, kind of large ladies putting green type scenario at the clubhouse, and that's publicly accessible. So you can basically come in for the day, play your 11 holes. They're quite interesting.
What's happened here?
Use it for practice. And then you have access to the clubhouse and all the facilities as well. And the clubhouse is spectacular. It's probably one of the best stocked pro shops I've seen in Europe, and including UK and Ireland. Lots of cool American brands that we don't usually see here. And in addition to that, food and drink is spectacular. like you say, we've traveled quite a lot the last few weeks, and I would say that food and drink is as good or better than almost anything I've had, whether it was at a clubhouse or in a proper restaurant in some of the major cities of the world. So yeah, it's like top tier stuff.
I've been spending a bit of time recently with, I won't name them, but or name their golf course, but they've got a new golf course that is an international destination place. And they said that if you're doing that, you really have to hit the nail on the head with the food and drink. So we've been to Hoopy, and the Hoopy it does that. If you're going to be an international golf club, you have to be able to provide the best food and drink you can, because that's included in the experience.
Yeah, I mean, a Hoopy was next level. Tell you what, we did some damage on the Wagyu steaks there, but and it just kept on coming. So that was nice. What an amazing experience. But I think that the experiential golf. So I think sometimes with a lot of golf courses, it's almost like when you go to Spain or Portugal, it's kind of like this all-inclusive package, and it's almost like that's the highlight, and then you get to play a bit of golf. Where some of these new offerings like Crownwood and your Hoopies and similar products, where it's kind of you pay the price, but you can really enjoy it, and you don't feel like you're being taken on food or drink. It's all high quality offerings, but that's across the board. The golf, the clubhouse, the experience, everything is top drawer. So Crownwood was an interesting one. A joy to play. There's, from what I remember, just being there, spending the day playing it, the first 6 and the last 6 holes are standouts, really clever opening holes and really, really good finishing set of 6 holes. And then in the middle, the course takes a little bit of a detour, not in a bad way, but it's just it's a change of pace. And it's also a slightly different aesthetic. There's still the open sand scrapes, but you play near the tree line, and there's kind of predominant features. There's a kind of like a burn or a drainage ditch that works its way through the property that's used quite strategically. So that's quite a nice feature. And then you work your way around what I can only think is a reservoir, or what appears to be a man-made lake. So you kind of have the middle bit of the round, and then bookended with these open sand scrape type holes. So yeah, interesting. Almost like 3 courses to the golf course. If you think about it as a meal, it's like a 3-course meal. It's a cohesive 18, but there is definitely like 3 distinct steps through the round, if you will. And
I do find that there's something about that that's quite endearing. So I always go back to Golspie when I talk about this, because it does that very well. People sleep on Golspie, but it has open space links land. It's got the kind of classic, what you'd call Dornoch elevation style links land, and then you've got the heathland in the far end. And when you go along and come back, you've got to the end when you get to get to the heathland, you get to the far end of the property, and then you come back through the course, and then you come back into the open. And it's kind of like we use it at Gullen number 1 a lot, or any of the Gullen courses. It's like a story, right? You just a bookend of your round is you leave the town, then you come back to it.
Well, I mean, there's lots of golf courses that do it and do it very well. I mean, maybe Formby is another good example that people might know. That definitely goes through some flatter architecture to start and finish. And then you kind of go into heathland holes, and then you definitely get a links vibe scattered throughout. So it's not a negative, it's an observation, I guess. And it's a fun course to play. What I would say is, one thing that I've seen both at Trump New, which he was responsible for, and Crownwood, was that the green sites can be exacting. So I think with a lot of golden age golf, and some of the newer minimalist stuff that you would see from kind of the big names, maybe the Renaissance crew, I'm thinking of specifically, is once you're on the green or you're on the right tier, you have a chance to get down in 1. And if you hit like a reasonable putt, you'll probably be there in 2. With a lot of Christians greens, like just because you're on the green doesn't mean that the hole's by no means over. And even if you're on the right tier of the green, it can still be very interesting. And if you don't hit 2 good putts or 1 great putt, you still got a lot of work to do to mop up. So that might be a reflection of Henrik's prowess, and Christian's a very good golfer himself. So that might be that coming through. But what I would say is that it definitely was an examination of your short game and your putting. But yeah, just an observation on maybe.
But arguably, there's places like Sunningdale that is an examination on your driving or your approach play. So at Christian stuff, the examination is around in and around the greens, so you have a lot more width and expanse, and you can hit bad shots and still be able to get up and down. If you hit, it's the exacting shots are asked around the greens.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is the cool thing about golf course architecture, because I've only seen, I think, 2 of Christian's courses. So the new course at Trump in Aberdeen, and then now Crownwood. And it might well be that the next course I see of his, maybe it'll be completely different. Because you do see that some architects do have elasticity. They adapt and change to the site or what's required of them, depending on client or demands of the project. But it's an interesting thing to see his style come through in those 2 courses that I've played. So again, not in any way a knock, more of an observation and a cool one to see. It left me wanting to see more of Christian's work is what I would say.
My big takeaway is the fact that if you're having a match against someone, or if you're betting against on a match, make sure you bet against the better putter. Bet for the better putter.
Yeah, I think that would be a top tip. Yeah, it's, if you have your short game dialed in there, you'll probably score very well. I don't think you have to be. It's not an exacting. I mean, I've played okay, I guess, until I ran out of juice on the back 9. But we had a good run on the front 9. But still, it's not an easy golf course to play. It is quite exacting. We were paired with the director of golf, who's a former tour player, and now plays off scratch. But scratch for a tour player and scratch for a scratch golfer are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure to witness that. He made it look easy. And the rest of us were, just, I think we lost the match by maybe the 11th or 12th hole. But anyways, it was bad. We took a beating.
Oh no, Jasper.
Yeah, but we didn't realize we were playing against like a 14-year tour veteran.
Yeah.
And I think Cody and him were playing straight up.
Okay.
We brought knives to a gunfight, basically.
Yeah, God, that doesn't sound friendly. But
and it was better ball. What is it called? Worst ball, better ball. So it was like on both levels. I think we were giving 9 shots to Thomas as well, or 7 shots at least. Yeah, so we didn't have a hope really. We were done by the second hole.
Put to the sword.
Yeah.
One thing you did mention that is interesting is you said that Crownwood was the best conditioned course you played this year.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some good stuff. And when I say conditioned, I'm not saying there's other courses that perhaps because they're not new and they've bedded in, they maybe have like monocultures. So I'm just thinking about some courses I've seen where like there is not a blade of POA on the entire golf course. It's fescues or bents all the way around. Tar ET is the one I'm thinking of. But that being said, I would say that Crownwood's greens were probably the purest I've seen her played this whole year. They were absolutely immaculate. And it wasn't just about fast putting, because that's not really a thing for me at all. I'd rather have true greens than fast greens. But there's a lot going on in those greens. They were appropriate. So the speed matched the undulations, but the firmness of those greens and aprons, and maybe that's the point to make, is I think the biggest thing is you can try and get your greens firm, but if you're playing running shots onto a green, there's nothing worse than soft aprons, because you kind of hit into an apron and then it stops.
Don't get me started. I played a few of those this last few weeks.
Yeah, and it's like if you're asked to play the running game, you should be able to land your ball 20, 30, 40, 50 yards in front of the green, use the contours to access pins, and that should be firm and running. So what I would say is that Crownwood was absolutely brilliant at doing that. Stevie Richardson is there. He used to be at Queenwood just outside London, spent some time at Sunningdale, I believe, and a few other places in the south. And tell you what, he's a mean operator. He knows how to grow in a golf course and present a golf course. they're in very capable hands there, and he's got that thing dialed in. So yeah, it was a real treat to play such a firm golf course, which is something you don't see too often, even in the UK, unfortunately.
We barely see it, full stop. There's, at that firmness that you've described, there's really like Royal Melbourne that's like comes to mind. You know, it's that kind of firm, right?
Yeah, like literally you could throw a ball on the green and it would bounce up to you and not leave a ball mark. I mean, and they had rain the previous day. And even the morning we were there, they had a bit of rain and it was just gone. So I think that's the other thing that came to mind too. So they use moisture meters. This is the one thing I don't see a lot in the UK. Everything around the green and surrounds was done by hand watering, where I think in the UK, a lot of times they just have like sprinkler systems around greens, flip them on, turn them off. Where a lot of the big courses, especially in Australia, New Zealand, and America, you know, the individual is responsible for caring for those greens. They punch, they get their readings, and they know exactly which sections of the green needs the right amount of water. And so, you know, in the morning, it's not just flip on the sprinklers and let it go. They're literally actively out there measuring and then given the appropriate amount. So it's a sniper rifle approach rather than a shotgun approach. And I think over time, that's probably why a lot of the, overfeeding and overwatering, those are the two things that are going to destroy firmness. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that in the UK.
This podcast is brought to you by Echo Shoes, particularly their new Biome C5. David, I know you have a wee bit of a fondness for an Echo.
Yeah, no doubt. I am literally a walking advertisement for Echo. And I can honestly say I played the World Top 100 in my Echoes. I spent years running around, diving around tennis court and stuff like that for a really long time. And that takes a toll because it was hard courts. And so hard courts, there's a lot of, things going on with your feet. And when I started to get a little bit older, not even old, like in my 30s, I had, my feet were bothering me when I had to do long walks and stuff like that. I mean,
4.5 miles is the standard golf round.
So 4.5 miles, right? So 4.5 miles of walking. When your feet hurt, it's the worst thing ever. And like I had so many rounds where I would get done and, when I first started playing golf and I couldn't take it. Like I had to get the shoes off and my feet were just throbbing. And, I ran into Echo probably in, 2007, 2008, 2009, whatever the year was. It was before I started my journey really for playing the World Top 100.
Yeah. If you're doing the world's top 100, you need to be able to trust where your clubs are going and never get sore feet.
Exactly.
So, yeah, the rest you can sort out along the way. So just a couple of things about the Echo Biome C5. Every detail is crafted for the perfect feel. And I know David and his many adventures in golf have enjoyed Echoes over the years, but these have been designed to play and built for comfort. So thank you very much, Echo. Appreciate it a lot.
We did, speaking about a golf course that is firm and is incredibly fun, but on the complete opposite side of the exacting scale in terms of exacting the drive, exacting the second shot. We were down at Rye.
Rye is a special place.
It's cool, right?
It's very cool.
I actually got my Rye hat. I know people can't see it, but if you're on YouTube, you saw me wear that terribly.
Yeah, it's a cool club, cool logo. Interesting lunch as well. It's kind of like a help yourself servery, which is good.
Great wine list.
Great wine list.
Great wine list.
So,
but
the amount of beef that you had on your plate was
disgusting. I know. Absolutely disgusting.
But we were there for a good time. But the golf course itself, so I've been there quite a few times, not as much as I would like, but every time I go, it just reveals itself a little bit more. So famously, Douglas Roland, Harry Colt laid it out in the late 1800s, one of Colt's first courses, but it's changed a lot since then. I actually have the scans from the maps in the clubhouse. So I shall be using a little bit of time to try and establish how much Colt is left and who's responsible for what. It is a special place and it's very, very unique.
Yeah, very unique. How often do you play a golf course that has about 6 bunkers on it? There's very few bunkers and they're not well kept. They're just pits. But it doesn't matter. If you go in them, you're an idiot.
I think that's the thing. It's it's not a flattering golf course for your game. Like when you go there, you've got to play golf. You've got to hit shots, and if it's even a little bit windy, those opening holes down the first side of that dune line, and then
4 and 5
are.
they're genuinely, they embarrass people. Like 4 just by itself can embarrass any. You have to be on your game. If you're not playing good golf, good luck.
And even if you're on the fairway behind that dune, it's a really difficult shot. So yeah, I remember 10 and 11 as holes that I didn't particularly, I wasn't necessarily fond of. But this time actually I had a new appreciation for them. They were better than I remembered. But it's just, again, you're up against that.
If anything, Jasper, 10 and 11 are actually quite nice because they give you a wee bit of relief. You know, they're like 9 and 10 on the old course, you know?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly right. And what's interesting is like, that's what Simpson said, is that sometimes like before you run, so you run the gauntlet on the front 9, and then it's kind of like 2 breather holes before you run the gauntlet on the second 9. It might be like the second, like the Jubilee course. It's an interesting one. So they're actually gaining land at Rye. So the golf course used to be just 18 holes. And because of whatever reason, there's actually a lot more land that's being added to the golf course. And they've been able to set out, I think it was 9 holes first and then another 9 after that. So they've got 2 18-hole golf courses. I think locally they've got 2 memberships, one for the Jubilee and then one for the Old.
Yep.
So it is well used by the local community. But amazingly, 250 green fees a year allowed at Rye.
Yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. If you want to go and play it, good luck.
It's very, very difficult. So you have to be quick, you have to be early, but it's well worth it. You probably have to do it years in advance, so just be really, really quick when those tee times open.
Rye's also
the
a
other way that
town.
you can. It's an amazing place. Yeah, what did we have? We had
couple of
Mexican
beers,
that night, didn't we?
And we weirdly had Mexican in Rye, which it's this quaint little village in like seaside town. You're just desperate for a burrito, Jasper.
I was, for whatever reason, I had the hankering. So it was that or pizza. And then after the big lunch, I felt that maybe the burrito was the better option. Anyways,
it's a really cool little town to wander around in. But in terms of a golf course, if you want to test your game and see if you really are able to play with the big boys, go and play at Rye. So they have some sort of major amateur tournament they host there.
Yeah, President's Putter.
The President's Putter. And the lowest score over the 4 days, is it? Yeah, lowest score ever over the 4 days is plus 11.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy, and I think because it happens earlier in the year. So that's the Oxford Cambridge Golfing Society. That's their home course. But yeah, it's just an absolute slog. I forget how many rounds it is, 8 or more to get through. But they effectively start off with hundreds in the mix, and then it's just whittled away. It's what we would want the PGA Championship to become, I think, is the idea.
Putter.
Yeah,
the match play. I was talking about the amateur event they threw a couple of years. Like they host some sort of amateur event, and it was like a stroke play event, not the knockout.
Okay.
And I think they said it was plus 11 was the winning score.
Yeah, so it looks like, just looking at the results from this year's, it's played in March. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds that you have to survive in order to get to
There's
the
a
final.
cool list of people that have won it, including Michael Attenborough.
Yeah, Donald Steele's won it quite a few times.
Donald Steele. Just an interesting group.
And it's exactly the kind of public schoolboy group that you would get from the Rye, the Deals, the Sandwich kind of crowd. So yeah, a very institutional golf club. It's a great place. You get a taste of the best of English golf when you go to Rye. Nothing changes quickly. But even the clubhouse is a cool place to hang out.
It's a wholly unique golf course. I've never played a golf course like it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones where it's a golf architect's golf course. Every architect
choice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. A lot of people wouldn't get it, wouldn't understand it, but it's, I think, an acquired taste. If you have a discerning palate, is probably the best way to put it. I reckon there's quite a few people that play it the first time and just don't get it or necessarily enjoy it, but it's an awesome golf course to see.
You could easily get bullied by that golf course. If you're not on your game, you just get punished. But it's not long. It's just asked for exacting shots.
And then the other one that surprised us both after that, James, was Littlestone.
What a cool little spot. Amazing ground for golf. Amazing ground. It felt a wee bit like a mixture of, if you took away the sand dunes and you had the elevation of like a deal, and then you had the ground of Royal St. George's in terms of the loops that it does, the routing it has, and then put it on Deal's ground. It kind of felt a wee bit like that. Seawall protects this very firm, almost gravel to the top site.
Yeah.
They've lost fairways because they can't keep enough water on them. But they're not lost. There's still grass there, but it's so browned out.
Yeah, already. And that was, springtime. So it's going to be, parking lot hard basically by summer, I'm sure, especially with the summer we're having down here. But they literally cannot put enough water on the fairways to keep the grass going. So, because it's so free draining. But yeah, an amazing little golf course. I would say it's got bags of potential. Like that golf course it's got a lot of headroom to grow. It's a good golf course. It's in the England 100. The interesting hole was it 16? They've got 2 or 3 Alistair Mackenzie par 3s. And then they've got the CB McDonald template for, is it Bottle, I believe? Yeah,
it's Bottle. And 5 and 17 are the 2 Alistair Mackenzie par 3s. And then 16's the famous Bottle. But it was never, I think, as we know it, they don't play off the same tees. We've suggested to them that they should get those tees reinstated so people can go see and play the way that Alistair Mackenzie played.
CB McDonald.
CB McDonald. Sorry, I keep mixing those two people up. Dyslexia strikes again. And then, but there's a bit of chat with them that they could reinstate that second fairway that, for some reason, I always thought was never there. And I think some people thought it was never there. And CB McDonald, I don't know whether he saw it as stated as it was there. But he definitely stated that he thought that should be a fairway. So I don't understand where, but there is a map showing that there was a second fairway.
Yeah, so this is the interesting thing. So I talked to Brian about this actually about, obviously they did the reinstatement of the Lidl Club. So they very much were taking an active interest in these template holes. So there's maps in the clubhouse right outside the secretary's office that do show from the late 1800s, basically 2 sides of the fairway with widens in between or some sort of dune. So there is like that option. Now, it could have been by the time that CB McDonald came around, they just weren't caring for the left-hand side of the fairway. But from those maps prior to his visits, I think he was there around the turn of the century, 1902 or 1904, somewhere in there anyways. Those maps that they have in the clubhouse predate that visit by about 10 years. And as you know, with golf courses, like a lot of things can change, especially at a time when there probably wasn't like fairway gang mowers, where there wasn't fairway gang mowers. There's probably sheep taking care of that golf course.
Yeah.
So there could well have been, and the map seemed to indicate that there was. So yeah, kind of an interesting find, but we are not done with looking at that hole and doing a bit more research. So watch the space. We'll hopefully share that with you soon.
Yeah, but it's very cool, good golfing ground, very cool piece of property. They don't get a huge amount of visitors, even though they're on that same tract. You can do round from Deal, St. George's. So I'd recommend people don't sleep on it. There's a lot of good golf out there. You'll enjoy it. There's a lot of really interesting greens and green sites, cool fairways. just really interesting native as well. Slightly different to the rest of the stuff around that area.
And like you say, an expansive site. It does feel like that. The fairways, some of them are adjoining or play parallel in a way, but you'd never ever feel that you're even like butting up to another fairway. It's such an expansive golf site. I guess similar to Muirfield, similar to Royal St. George's. It's kind of got that feel of, golf has not been shoehorned onto this property. It's been laid out over top of it wherever it was best. So yeah, really good. And then that was 36 at Rye, Littlestone in the morning, and then we made our way up to the Addington, which is I think one of the first ones you've seen it. Now I've been going to the Addington for 12 years, and usually go every year, once or twice or more. Absolutely love that golf course. And every time I go, I'm still astonished at how much work they've done, but yet how much work there is to do. It's incredible, the transformation that's been made there.
I thought the Addington was very much an experience that I wasn't expecting. When you walk outside the first hole and you play the first, second, third, you kind of don't realize what's going to come at you. There's a lot of, the scale on some of the holes is incredible. And I know from speaking to you, there was a huge amount of this stuff covered up with trees and with whatever. But it sounds like Ryan really knows what he's doing, and he's got he understands and gets it. Do you know those people that just get golf?
Yeah, I think it's a good example of a owner operator who's not beholden to a committee. They can make big, bold decisions, and that can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes you can make big, bold decisions and they're not the right one. The thing with the Addington is, Ryan's really got his finger on the pulse there, and he's got good help with I know Mike Clayton and
DeVries.
Mike DeVries. They've done a lot of the shaping and advised on a lot of it. And yeah, you can see the quality work there is very good, and it's just getting better and better and better. And it's taken a big jump in the rankings. I think it's right around the 30 mark in England, something like that, after this last visit. And it'll continue to rise. It's some serious golf. The only golf that I can think it resembles, especially on that back nine, is the original Harry Colt Sunningdale new holes. When you and I walked those holes,
the scale was
last
just
year.
Insane.
It's like,
how did they get rid of those? I understand why they got rid of them, because a bunch of members probably thought this is too much.
Yeah, couldn't walk them. And it was basically just difficult to get to the halfway house and then back in with those holes is how the story goes. The interesting thing about that, though, is Harry Colt helped Abercrombie in 1913. Same time he was at St. George's Hill. And St. George's Hill in places has some big elevation changes. The first hole in particular. And then as you get just into like 10, 11, 12, kind of the biggest ones. So it was almost like he found a routing at the Addington with Abercrombie. At the same time, he was trying a few big holes at St. George's Hill. And then it wasn't until the mid-20s that he had a proper go at Sunningdale New. And it seems like by that time, he was very comfortable with just making big, bold decisions. And I think he went to the next level, even up from Addington New at Sunningdale New. And unfortunately, they don't exist anymore. But there are rumors that is being looked at. So we'll see what Gil Hans has in store and what Sunningdale has the appetite to do. But I have heard a couple of rumors that maybe.
There is definitely an appetite at the club to do something about those holes, because they have chopped down all the trees and brought those holes back into visualization, if that makes sense. So you can see where the edges of those holes used to be.
Yeah, the corridors are all there now.
Yeah, because they've brought in the corridors. They've allowed them to be able to breathe. So there's obviously a group of people in the club that make decisions that are going, yeah, we could do something here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too. So, that's, I think what they've done at the Addington it's opened up a new brand of golf. Now, I've not yet been to Pine Valley. I know you're going later in the year, I think. But that's the other golf course. And Yale's the other one that whenever you talk to individuals, like when they talk about scale, enormity, severity, those are things that are kind of buzzwords that come out from that. But the Addington is unique in and of itself.
I've got a couple of friends going to Yale in next weekend, I think. So I'm going to get on the blower and be like, give me a bloody call. Give me a call right now. I want to know what happened. Explain every hole to me.
And I think that's what makes the Addington unique for me, is that it's the scale and severity. I mean, 7's amazing. We got to walk it. Sadly, we didn't play 7. It was closed. The massive new, like, 110
it opened
yard
a
green.
week later.
That's it, yeah. But we did get to walk it and see it and take a look around. Ryan very graciously said we could do that, so we did. And then the 8th hole is just like, that's the first one that kind of blows you away. You kind of look up that hill and you think to yourself, like, what am I supposed to do here?
I'm pretty obviously well experienced in golf, and I know what I'm looking at almost all the time. I had no bloody clue what was going on there, even though I went up to have a look at the fairway before playing the hole.
Yeah.
You know, I went up at 5 green. I went up and had a wee peek. I was like, this looks wild. This is crazy. And then I was like, played a few holes and then got up there. I was like, okay, so you aim at a tree. It's mental. It's mental. But actually, there's a lot of width up there. So there's loads of space for you to play your ball into. So it doesn't really matter where you actually aim. It's more aiming for the sake of getting a better shot in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it'll be interesting to see what Ryan decides there. There's obviously that tree on the top of the hill. You kind of have to decide, do you split the uprights, go left? If you're hitting a driver, that's usually the play. I think there's a back tee going in there as well. So that might make that drive a little bit easier in the sense that you're hitting into the crown of the hill from the teeing ground. I think because the tees are a little bit further, if you hit a driver up there, you can sometimes go through the fairway, even if you choose the proper line. So that will be an interesting one.
If you land on that fairway and you don't get tight enough, I say tight enough, like there's loads of room between the tree and the ridge of the fairway. But if you go right of the ridge, you're now playing essentially a blind shot to a island style green almost, because the only entry point's from the right. And you're playing a big shot. So you've got to hit a big shot, whether it's off the tee or off the fairway. There's always one big boy exacting shot. Whereas actually it's a really simple shot once you get over the ridge and it runs down. You've got 100 yards, 120 yards or whatever, just a wedge shot into a big green. Boom. Easy. Yeah. Crazy stuff. Really cool.
And that's where I think the Addington, it's one of those ones where, again, a lot of people would play it and not necessarily get it or see why it's so good at first blush, because you don't see golf that big very often that's that good. It's very difficult to find enormous golf. Thinking maybe, it's a little bit like, the 4th hole at Royal St. George's with that massive bunker.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is really cool. You can hit over that bunker if you have that shot, or you have to go around to the left. And you don't usually play, or maybe St. Enodoc, with a big Himalaya bunker. It's just everything's at a scale that it's hard to quite understand what you're doing. But to find it in the middle of London with views of like the Shard and Canary Wharf just across the way.
Yeah.
It's just a unique location, a unique golf course. And to find it in that setting is spectacular. So look, we did well with Rye and Littlestone and Addington. And that's a trip that most people could do if they wanted to get ahead of it and book Rye early. That is a 2-day trip, 36 at Rye, Littlestone and Addington. It's tough to beat that lineup.
Really cool little. And if you wanted to do something else, you'd start off, go round the coast of Kent and get Prince's, Deal, and Royal St. George's.
And the other one, that's just north of Prince's, is the North Foreland short course. So the Northcliffe course. So this is it's like 18 hole short course on, I forget how many acres, 10 or 12 or 13 acres or something like that. And it's 18 original Tom Simpson green sites. It's spectacular. And if ever I go down to that part of the country, whether it's to play Deal or Sandwich or Princes, like North Foreland short course is always the first stop.
What a cool way of starting your trip. Go to a really interesting short course.
Yeah.
Fly into London, head along the coast, the north coast of Kent, play the short course, go stay at Prince's or in St. George Sandwich or in Deal or whatever you want, play those three and then head round the coast again. It's a really cool little trip, actually. One hell of a
trip.
I
think that's the one. A lot of people have gone and played like the big three down in Kent. So Prince's, Deal, Sandwich, but North Foreland just adds that like extra layer of something you haven't seen before. It's a bit different. The rules, I think, originally was that it's a two club course, so it was a wedge and a putter. But if you try and stick to that, it's a pretty cool golf course to try and play. And then the question is, do you bring your 50, your 54, your 58, or whatever you've got? Because there are some holes that are probably north of 100, 120 yards, and then quite a few that are shorter than that. So you've got to hit all sorts of like half shots and running shots and try to manufacture shots with a single wedge. And inevitably you'll be in bunkers and have some difficult lies. But it's just good fun. So that's a top tip.
There's I've just done a big trip with the Lockhart Travel Club. If anyone is interested, we have a lot of fun on those trips. Just really, do you know what it makes it is just a really good bunch of boys, just have a lot of fun. Everyone's like-minded. You can put anyone with anyone and just have fun. It's great. It's a great experience.
So maybe we tell the listeners, so Lockhart is it's basically the travel side of Top 100, but it's elite golf travel. So a lot of times, difficult to get to places. We've got the ability to get past the gate, if you so to speak. And then it's kind of the best of everything included with that. The golf is elite, but then where you stay, where you play, where you eat, activities, if you do them, those are all elite as well. And then the networking opportunities within that club are spectacular. So what was the itinerary for this last trip?
So the itinerary was, we went to Renaissance Stands Up for which is a private club in East Lothian. So it's almost, you can't pay and play, but it's a dope course. They've got the Scottish Open. So, they have the third best field of any tournament last year.
And that's, I think the Scottish Open is like serious golf tournament.
It's only behind the US Open and the Open because the Masters has obviously got a smaller field and it's got a bunch of past winners, and the PGA doesn't include a lot of the DP World Tour and the World guys. So what you have is the third best field in golf playing a Tom Doak golf course, which is just pretty cool on links land.
And it puts up a fair fight. I mean, I think one of the best modern golf shots I've seen was Rory's 2 or 3 iron. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? Into the teeth of it, and he
3 years ago
rolled it up.
I was standing in the balcony with Brad Faxon.
That's right.
Some serious name drops: Tom McKibben and Brad Faxon.
And then hold the putt to beat who's the Scottish lad that he got it the
Bob
next year.
McIntyre.
I think. Bob McIntyre broke his heart the first year, and then he made good on it the second year. I think.
What was amazing about that club, people don't realize how much wind there was that time, because it looked like it was a short club from where he was, but my God, there's a plaque there now, so you can go see it. But when Rory held the putt, it turned to Brad and I was like, that's good advertising for you, because he'd just become his putting coach. So the trip was Renaissance, then we had the doubleheader at Muirfield, and then which is just the best day in golf. And then we were up to Kingsbarns, which is, I know people say, the best modern course in Scotland. I need to play it a couple more times. There's some very manufactured things there. For an American, you wouldn't notice them, because every golf course in America is manufactured. But for
I guess
someone,
it's Kyle Phillips, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kingsbarns?
But someone who's grown up on at North Berwick, where it's just completely raw golf, and then it's just one of those things. It's very obvious to me, but every American who comes here says it's the one they've enjoyed the most. There's a lot of good golf out there. A lot of good golf.
If we go by our rankings, we put an article about this out on the website. I think it was last year. So the top 4 Scottish new builds that are in the world rankings: Kingsbarns, Ardfin, Castle Stewart, and Trump International. So those 4 make it into the world. I know you've played all 4 of those. I still have Ardfin to knock off, which here's hoping maybe later this year.
It's not a links course, right? So... yeah.
Castle Stewart, Kingsbarns, and Trump International.
Well, I've played all 3 of them in the last... 2 of them in the last week and all 3 of them in the last year. So Castle Stewart is much more... I would say what Gil has done there is much more natural to the site, but then it doesn't feel like a classic links golf course because it provides a huge amount of width, which is more akin to the modern style of golf course architecture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few big walks there because of just the way the site sits. The top holes sit above. It's a ridge line essentially. So you play down low and then you come back above the ridge line back to the clubhouse, and then the same on the way back. And I think the routing's really clever because you play 3 holes, loop round, play back on yourself, and then back again. So you're actually... I know that we always say that playing zigzag golf, so it's just like down and back is really horrendous golf, but it does that very cleverly with the site.
Yeah.
So you're not actually next to each other. You're playing on different ground completely every time. Very clever. But they're big green sites, big wide fairways, which if you go to Rye or North Berwick or wherever, it doesn't quite have that same width to it. And then you've got Kingsbarns, which has the width, has a couple of golf holes that I would say are connecting holes.
Mm-hmm.
But the holes that aren't the connecting holes are spectacular. And it's an amazing site. When you're on top of the property, you can feel the manufacturedness of the land. Whereas at Trump Old, it's definitely the most severe site out the lot. Incredible dunes. It feels like you're playing in Ballybunion or one of these West Coast dune sites. And what Hawtrey's done there is really interesting. He's created quite a subtle golf course in those dunes. So Hawtrey definitely comes from the school of the Muirfields, the Deals, quite respectful of the sites, but also a player's paradise, because if you put it on a fairway, you get it gives you a decent lie and a good shot in, whereas so you do get that, but then if you go offline at any of these courses, you can find trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not any. At Trump Old, it can be punishing, whereas the other 2 aren't.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's the playability factor is very high on the on Kingsbarns and Castle Stewart, but then at Trump, it's a test of golf. It's going to ask a lot of you. But it can turn into a long day at Trump if it's really windy and you don't have control of your ball that day. But if you do, you get really rewarded. You really do. And the rough on the new, they've grown it out. So it's fairly new rough. So they haven't quite been able to get it completely under control yet. Whereas I think the rough and the old is much more manageable. You can find your ball, you can play it, but don't expect a chance to put it near. Yeah, so the thin and wispy still to be seen at the new course at Trump. I think that's what we said last year when we played it for the first time, was that, just to grow it in sometimes. And especially,
On windy link sites, especially with like boundary fairway irrigation, if you're throwing a lot of water down and it's a windy site, that water's not just going to go forward, it's going to go everywhere in the wind. And then you end up basically growing grass on dunes on the peripheries of fairways, which end up being thick and lush. But
they'll sort
difficult.
that out. That's just them trying to get the grass properly grown in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a slight at all. Yeah, so I don't know what order I'd want to play them in, but I don't. As golf, Kingsbarn's a lot of fun. There's big walks, but so does Trump, and this is the interesting thing in links golf. There's very rarely do you get asked for a big walk,
mm-hmm.
but in the modern stuff there is on all of them.
That's true.
So why
what's interesting is it's interesting. I think similar. So when you talk about some of the bigger walks on classical golf courses, like Cruden Bay has some big walks. To get to the top of the hill, is it 8? And then you have to walk up to 9. I think it's 8 and then 9. You play into the punch bowl and you walk up. That's a big walk. And then once you get to the far end, you hit an elevated shot down to get into that back pocket of dune land.
But that's
so you hit off an elevated tee.
That's the only big walk. That is the only one. That's one just because of the nature of the site. You can't fit in anything else on that side of the hill that has the famous coffin hole.
But it's very true. Like Kingsbarns and Castle Stewart both have, like, if you want to get back to the clubhouse, at Castle Stewart, you literally have to walk straight up that hill. There's no other elegant way to get around it other than, look, there's 150 feet straight up. Like we talked about the severity of the site, say at the Addington or the Sunningdale New Lost Holes. And if you're playing golf holes on severe ground, it's not as bad, even though the walk is the same. Like you're still walking up a hill, but it seems like if you're walking after you've hit your ball, then it's acceptable. Where if you have to stop golf and then walk, then somehow it's not as fun. I mean, the one course that I would say that kind of goes against that as far as a new build is Rossapena St. Patrick's. That site, although there is some big walks and there's some hard walks, I think 14, 15, 16, kind of going up, down, and then back around on yourself. Those done very elegantly. So, and I guess that's why you'd look at St. Patrick's and say, well, it's a really good golf course. But
Jasper, one thing I would say is, like, a great example is Gullen 1. I know you're not as much a fan of it as I am, but when you get to the top of the hill, you have had a big walk to get to the top of the hill. But once you get to you've played golf all the way from the greens are right next to the next tee box. You play golf all the way. That means that the site isn't too severe to have a stroll up a hill. You know, it's not a heavy stroll. And once you get to the top, the payoff is great within terms of the view, the experience, you know? So if you have, like, there's no way they could have played golf up the slope at between, I think it's 13 and 14 at Castle Stewart, or 12 and 13. Like, there's no way. It's impossible.
And I think the only way that you could have done it is, I mean, I think that's where a lot of people too, you know, maybe they try and fit a par 3 in there where you try and work your way like halfway up the hill. So you kind of walk a little bit up and then you would bench a green in somehow that's a little bit higher. And then after that, you would walk up again. But then again, it kind of goes against the ethos of what they were trying to do, is find the golf holes. So,
and let's be honest, uphill par 3s, there's very few work in the world.
Exactly. That brings me to an interesting one. So Royal Copenhagen. Okay. So I was over to see Thomas, flew into Copenhagen. Then we were meeting up with Cody, who's a top 100 employee in America. He was over here on a little vacation with his wife. And we decided that, we'd go and see Thomas and Cody. And so we played Royal Copenhagen. So it's a deer park. So similar to like a knoll park. Down in London. So it's an ancient hunting ground. Something about like recent kind of like royal families in Europe wanting massive hunting lodges with deers and deer parks. We were doing it here and they were doing it there. So anyways, but it makes for good golf. So Knoll. So it's like Royal Copenhagen is the Knoll Park of Denmark, basically. And a really interesting golf course in the sense that the land is rolling hills, basically. There's very few trees, only on the periphery of the course. And it plays longer than what you would imagine looking at the scorecard, because a lot of the landing zones are into the uphill side of the fairway, and there's lots of straight holes that play as doglegs. So you've got to take on hazards in order to get the line or to make the hole play shorter. So really, really classic golf course architecture. Like nothing over the top, nothing crazy about it, but just really, really solid golf. And the green sites were really cool. Lots of like mounting, grass hollows, above ground features. I think there is bunkers out there, but definitely not a lot. And 16 is an amazing bunkerless uphill par 3. And to your point, you don't see them very often, but it's got a multi-tiered green kind of like put on top of this knoll, this little hill. And it's just an amazing, amazing golf hole. It plays about 190 yards uphill. I hit a really good shot into it, thought that I would be fine. It just kind of rolled off the left-hand side. And then you get up there and look at it, and literally there is no options for me. So I think it still took me 3 to get down, and I was quite happy with that. But it's a really exacting uphill par 3, which you don't see a lot of. But if you're ever transiting through Copenhagen, like honestly, it's a golf course that I would go back to and play. Yeah, really, really good city golf.
I've never been there, but I've heard what I've seen. It looks like an incredibly raw but fun place to play golf.
Yeah, it's basically a common land golf course that's just turned out really well.
It looks expansive as well.
Yeah, it's a really cool piece of property with a very simple golf course with very classic golf course architecture laid on top of it. There's no reason why you couldn't have more golf course like that anywhere in the world. And it's good. It's really, really good. It's not tricked out. They have a small team taking care of it. And the clubhouse is great. You drive up and you park in this car park, and you can get changed there, put your shoes on, all the rest of it. Get your bags out of your car, and you have to walk underneath, like through a tunnel underneath a railway. You get to this massive gate, which has the big coat of arms on it from the Danish royal family. You open that up, and then you're into the park. And then you've probably got like a 300 or 400 yard walk to get to the clubhouse. And so it's an interesting one, because I was thinking about it. It's almost like that ritual of pulling up into the car park, getting changed, grabbing your clubs, walking through a tunnel, going through a gate, walking to the clubhouse. It's almost like you're leaving the world behind. And it's a beautiful way to start. It's maybe like when you turn down the road to go to Muirfield, like you can see the gates at the end, and it's kind of, or the drive in at Augusta, you pull in through the gates and you kind of go through this. A lot of the big clubs, whether you're driving or walking, it's almost like there's this transition period that allows you to forget about what you've left and embrace what you're coming to. I know
really exactly cool. What you're talking about there. And I do think the walk makes it. So if you have that first initial walk to get to where when you drive, it doesn't feel quite, maybe different at Magnolia Lane because you're watching, it's this space that is so stunning. But when you're going to somewhere like Muirfield or Royal Copenhagen, or I'm trying to think of other examples of it, but it's the fact that you have to park at distance away from where you're going. And then that kind of 5-minute walk, 2-minute walk with your golf bag, your phone gets turned on to silent, gets chucked in the golf bag, and then that's it. The world cannot be my friend for,
And I think that's a really special thing. So, it was interesting. We played at Crownwood and we were listening to music. When we went out with Christian in the morning, we had country tunes on and he was blasting his radio and all the rest of it. And then we went out in the afternoon and we had like classic rock going. Hoopy was the same thing. So similar vibe, like really cool experience. But then you get to like a different type of golf, different type of golf course, different vibe entirely. Just as good, just really different. And I think that's what's been interesting over the last little bit is that we've had like common land deer park golf. We've had, really high end modern private golf. We've had, Littlestone public pay and play. just raw rudimentary golf over some really stunning land. Really, really good stuff. And none of it better or worse than any of it, just different. And I guess that's the beautiful thing, is that in this little island we call home, it's like all of that in abundance right here, which is pretty lucky. We're very fortunate to have it.
A lot of the golf that we'd be talking about, people in America have probably never heard of, or in Scandinavia, no one's ever going to Copenhagen unless they're from Scandinavia,
And so there's the last one. Maybe we can end on this one, but and we haven't even got to all the courses that you've been able to play. But
my list would take I've been playing too much golf.
So the last one we went to was a links golf course in the south of Sweden it's actually closer to Copenhagen, but it's a really cool trip if you can do it. Crownwood, Royal Copenhagen, and then Falsterbo, which is a really interesting but difficult links course right on the southern tip of Sweden. Really interesting tidal marshes. So that you have these like big kind of bunker looking things that are full of mud.
So it's a bit like a Royal West Norfolk.
It is, yeah, in a way, but not necessarily the expansive marshland, but like these pockets that you kind of have to avoid. I somehow danced around them. The front nine is just littered with these things. And when you kind of sit up on the tee, you can look at it and you don't really know if it's a bunker or one of these ponds. And somehow, like, the golf gods were smiling on me and I missed every single one of them. Played quite well on the front. And then, there's some serious golf to be had on that back nine. Like, it's a difficult golf course. I'm not going to say I hate using that word fair, because I don't think good golf is necessarily always fair, as in a quote unquote execution of a shot necessarily gets rewarded. But you just had to hit solid golf shots repeatedly. And if you didn't, the next shot was always harder. So I guess that is the definition of a good strategic golf course. But yeah, there's some serious golf to be had there. And at first blush, it's very, very mundane. You kind of pull up in the car park, and the car park is like surrounded by massive like nets. It feels like you've parked on a driving range. And that's kind of the first impression. You kind of think, I came all the way here for this. And then as you make it around the golf course, it just gets better and better and better. And then the closing holes are really good from the lighthouse in. Just solid hole after solid hole after solid hole. So there you go. Here's maybe 2 top tips for the listeners. So if you're going down to Kent and you want to see something different, obviously always try to play Deal, Sandwich, Princess. Those are your big 3. Add in North Foreland if you can, and Littlestone
and Rye
as well. Those are always available, and Rye if you can do it. If you can,
and en route back into London is Addington. Addington
for sure. If you have extra time to do even more, I would always put Pulborough in there. And if you wanted to experience some really old school heathland, then Royal Ashdown Forest is an interesting one there too.
Bunkerless.
Yeah, it's a unique golf course, so it's just a taste of something different. But if you were looking for a week-long holiday this summer or autumn, that's a cracking trip. Some really high-end stuff, some really unique stuff, and just a completely different experience between links and heathland, and a variety of links and a variety of heathland. And if you can make it over to Scandinavia, we did it in 3 days. Arrived on the first day, one night, second night, and then left late on the third day. Copenhagen is an amazing city. It's a miniature London, all the best bits of it. Absolutely brilliant city. And you've got Royal Copenhagen, Falsterbo just across the bridge, and then you've got Crownwood if you can make it up there. But even if you did Falsterbo and Royal Copenhagen, available to everyone, you would not be disappointed with that trip. Parkland and Links course over there, city break at Copenhagen. That would be a good weekend.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, genuinely does. Well, I think we've hit the hour mark, so we probably don't want to bore everyone too much about our adventures and showing off our amazing golf courses we've played. Thank you very much to everyone who's listened, and thank you very much to you, Jasper.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James.
As always, it's a joy. And to everyone who's listening, please remember to play fast and lunch slow.
Top100golfcourses.com has set the standard for golfers worldwide, and now you can wear that standard proudly. Premium apparel and exclusive gear for those who truly know the game. Shop now at top100golfcourses.com.